part 2 of the True North section, and this is your business core values. So now you've completed your personal core values, hopefully you're beginning to see how they can truly be your guiding light and help you to make the right decisions and take the right actions. So now we want to transfer that same concept into the business itself, so that the business has a set of core values. So businesses without this in place will feel that they're disconnected from their team. Everyone's got their own ideas about how things should be done. As a result, there's inconsistent decisions and actions throughout the team. So if a customer calls in and speaks to somebody, they potentially could get a completely different answer or a different solution to whatever their issue, question, problem is. And fundamentally, there's a risk of things just simply not being done the way that you would do them. Okay, and that can be incredibly frustrating from a business owner's point of view. And I speak from experience where, you know, you'll hear of something happening and an outcome, and you think, well, why did you do that? You know, clearly the customer's not happy. Yeah, you've just got it off your desk. We haven't really solved the situation. So I'm sure you can perhaps relate to that, but certainly you can understand that it's massively frustrating when that happens, and also for the customer as well. They don't know where they stand either. Excuse me. So what we want is basically everyone on the same page, so that there is that consistency throughout the business. A customer calls in with any kind of issue, it doesn't matter who they talk to, that it will get resolved in the same way with the same satisfactory outcome, and the customer's happy and off they pop. Okay, ultimately the goal here is that everyone gets things done in the right way for everyone. Does that make sense? And this will actually lead on to another section a little bit later in terms of how we can manage with using these core values. But let's start by getting them established. So where do people go wrong with this type of thing? Well, the reality is that most people, most businesses just simply don't have these company core values in place, and even if they did, they're so vague, or they get written out once and popped in a drawer and no one ever sees them ever again. So as a result, understandably, people aren't operating in alignment with these core business values. As a result, there's conflicting values within the team in terms of how something might get done, which all in all leads to a bit of a chaotic situation. So what we're aiming for here is, as I say, everyone being on the same page, and that consistency of decision and action throughout the business. So this actually forms the cornerstone of your business culture. Now, you may have heard this phrase before about business culture, and left unaddressed, this is where we can end up with toxic business cultures, where, say, people aren't in alignment with things, and often it's not necessarily their fault. Often they think they're doing the right thing, but they've just got simply nothing to guide them. So what we're going to ultimately aim to achieve here is to get a list of these company core values. They will then be displayed throughout the common areas of your building. Now, your building might be just one room, one office, yeah, in which case if you've got one or two people working there, still pop them on the wall and go through this whole process with your co-worker, even if there's only two of you. Clearly, if there's more and more of you, involve everyone with that as well. An effective way to visualize and understand this, what the objective is through having these company core values in place, is we can draw it out like this. So let us say an issue of some description occurs. Could be an easy one, is a customer calls into the office with an issue of some description. Without the company core values in place, from here it could go in literally any direction. Those directions could vary from being excuse me, from being good, bad, bad, bad. In other words, if it's not done the way that you would do it, in the satisfactory way that's in alignment with your values, these are all wrong. And like I said before, it may well be that the individual thinks they're doing the right thing, and that may be their way of thinking, but it's not the way of the company doing things. That makes sense. So what we need then is to, a very expensive board rubber here, what we need to do is have our list of values agreed and displayed for all to see. Okay, so when this inquiry, question, issue, whatever it might be, comes in, so we'll put issue. When that issue comes in, what we need is for whoever responds to that to consult the values. Now, the values should lay out and be clear, give a clear direction as to exactly what should happen. So, they consult the values. Value 2, whatever it might be, will suggest what they should do in this scenario. And it's the same thing that anyone else, if they followed that route of consulting the values, would end up doing. And so they take the right or the same action. Because it's in alignment with the values and it's the right thing to do, what we get is a satisfactory conclusion to it. Yeah, customer's happy, phone goes down. So whatever issue or problem is sorted in a way that's in alignment with the values. What that then means is that the issue is finished. Okay, done. Because they've followed this route. Like I say, without this, yeah, an issue comes in, yeah, the potentially wrong action happens, which then leads off into one or two different additional problems or dissatisfaction. Not a space for satisfaction. So yeah, either there's a problem or the customer is dissatisfied. If there's a problem, then again that continues on until somebody else takes an action. Is that good or bad? Or the same person exacerbates the problem and it gets worse, and so on and so on. And this ultimately ends up with a negative Trustpilot review, unhappy customer, potentially an unhappy team member as well, because if this goes really south and the customer ends up arguing with them and potentially getting very angry because the situation hasn't been dealt with in the appropriate manner, then everyone's upset and it's chaos. Phones get slammed down, workers upset for the rest of the day, customer clearly disgruntled, negative reviews, and so on. I say it doesn't matter which path, the end result is basically bad. In a lot of the cases, or there's the potential to. The fact of the matter is this could happen every single time, or it could happen occasionally, depending on the personal values of the actual team member themselves. But the fact of the matter is they won't be 100%, it doesn't matter who they are, they won't be 100% reliable in terms of acting in accordance with the values unless you have these values actually nailed down in stone and displayed. And more to the point, that everyone is in alignment with them and everyone has bought into them. And this is really important, this buying into. And we'll cover more of this in a future section. But it's, if someone isn't in alignment with those values, then in other words, they'll refuse to do things in the way that we want it to be done, in which case we may have to get them, they can move that person along somewhere or another. But so that's where the true value is in this. It's in this process here that it simplifies what's happening within the business. It keeps everything in alignment and consistent, and that is well, simply it's more efficient, and everyone is happier at the end of the day. So that's where we want to get to now. So imagine, well, first of all, imagine the stress that this will bring you, because ultimately, you know what will happen, which is at this point here and so on, you'll end up getting involved because the buck stops with you, and so it gets escalated to the point where you've got to deal with it. There's a there's a lovely example of I read it in a management book probably years ago. In fact, I think the book was called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. Now I'm going to do this no justice whatsoever, but I'm going to try and explain it to you. So the idea is that all issues are monkeys, okay? And as your team fails to deal with them in the appropriate manner, they end up bringing you that monkey. Now, the beauty of the values in place is that you can get them to refer to the values and take their monkey away with them, and sort it out in a satisfactory manner. Without these values in place and without everyone buying into it, what happens is you get left with their monkey, and at the end of the day your office is filled with monkeys. Now that's clearly an analogy, but you can visualize that and the chaos that brings, and maybe that feels familiar to you, whether in this current role that you'll find yourself in or maybe in previous ones. But nonetheless, you don't want an office full of monkeys by the end of the day. So this is your monkey prevention system. Okay, they come to you with their monkey, you ask them to consult the values, they put their monkey to bed. Okay, so hopefully that gives a nice vivid idea of how this works and why we need to get the company values absolutely nailed down. So how are we going to do that? First of all, consult the worksheet that is attached with this video. And work through the process. But the process you're going to go through is you need to get team involvement in this. Like I say, it's important that everyone buys into these core values. If they don't, they are not in alignment with the company and the core values, and we'll come on to that at a later stage. So yeah, get everyone together and get them to note down suggestions for the business core values, because the truth is, firstly, you might not have all the answers anyway, and so somebody might come along with something and go, actually that's really good, I didn't think about it from that point of view. And so a little bit like our previous exercise where we were getting all the words together, in this exercise we're going to go straight to let's accumulate a load of different values, okay? And then once we've got these lists together, we want to start thinning them out or combining them, ultimately coming to our ultimate list of values. And once again, we don't really want to have more than 4 or 6 of these values. Certainly you don't want 10 of them, it's far too much. But yeah, work together on that. And once you've got perhaps your top 5, then write them down and understand how each of these company values actually relates to your business processes and your business objectives. So, for example, in one of my previous businesses, one of our company core values was that we aim for a wow. Okay, so the answer to any kind of situation or provision of service or providing a solution to an issue is yes, no, or wow. Okay. Now, if you said to somebody, does that solve your problem? Yeah, it's a bit naff. If somebody says, does that solve your problem? No, clearly that's bad. If somebody says to you, when you ask them the question, did that solve your problem? They go, wow, oh my God, yeah, that's an amazing solution to whatever that was. I'm amazed by your level of service. Wow. Okay. In which case, that's probably the best possible outcome you could aim for. Yes, no, or wow. So we aim for a wow. That was one of our company values. And so that prevents the situation where you're going through this process and the customer remains unhappy, because for that to happen wouldn't be in alignment with the values, the specific one being that we aim for a wow. Another example of one of the ones that we had in a previous business was that honesty saves everybody's time. Now that's quite an interesting one, for the simple fact that most companies will have honesty, yeah, which, okay, yeah, clearly you want to be honest, but there's also an element of why. And yeah, believe it or not, you do have to explain these things. So why is it important to be honest? Well, the reality is it saves everyone's time. It stops a query turning into a disaster if people are misled and what have you, so we keep it honest. And so it makes a lot of sense to that. So once again, you might get a team member that, I don't know, maybe they're scared of an outcome, so they'll not be 100% honest with something, which you know full well that's going to end up in a chaotic situation. So honesty saves everyone's time. Now the customer might not like the answer, but that's okay, because we can then move on to one of the next values that ultimately results in a wow, for example. So it means that it might not be, this particular issue might not be sorted in one straightforward thing. It might be that we have to go through several processes until such point as they're happy, but nonetheless, that's where we end up. Okay, so the thing to remember here is that your business core values are the cornerstone of your business culture. How do you want your business to be perceived in terms of its culture by people that work with you, people that supply you, and people that are your customers? All of this really matters. If people that work with you perceive the company culture to be toxic, they won't stay. And they will ultimately do more harm than good. If your suppliers aren't happy with the way you operate, your culture, maybe maybe there's some people which for some reason or another are really horrible to the suppliers because they're frustrated with them or what have you. Well, guess what? That supplier stops answering the phone, stops helping you out, and so on. And similarly, of course, with customers, we know that they need to be super happy by the time we've finished. So that's the cultural element, and these core values are really the cornerstone of that culture. Everything's built around it. So yeah, these guiding principles will be what guides the decisions your team members make. So let's work through the worksheet. Involve everyone in your team. The more you can involve them, the more it becomes part of them, and the more likely they are to be in alignment with it. Okay. Then, once you've got them all nailed down, once again, get them printed out. Be proud of them. Yeah, I'd even go as far as to take it to a designer so that they can make it pretty. Yeah, so it looks good when it's placed in and around your building, or potentially in the vehicles as well. Yeah, do be proud of your culture and your values. Once that's done, take a picture, comment below so we can see it's been done. I look forward to seeing it. All right. Next stage we're going to go on to is how we can manage the business through our company values. So it's values driven management is what we're going to get onto next. Okay, see you soon.